So good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to begin now this session on solar heat for commercial industrial applications. And this is Belén Gallego. I am from ATA Insights, and I'm joining today from Madrid, from my home, because here in Spain, we're still largely homebound. I suppose this is the case with most people that are joining here today. But with me today, I actually have three experts that are going to be talking to you about this specific topic. I'm just your moderator. And I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves so that you can get to know them a little better if you don't already. So first, I'd like to ask Barbara, please, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Belén. My name is Bärbel Epp. I'm the director of a German agency called Solrico. We are actually focusing on solar heating and cooling, so no photovoltaics or electricity in our work. We are involved in a lot of international projects, and we are the editors of the website solarthermalworld.org, which also covers solar heating and cooling. And I will report today about an international survey we carried out among the industry, which is supplying solar industrial solutions. And I'm looking forward to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Barbara. It's a great magazine. I recommend you guys go and visit and sign up. And I'd like to ask you, Barbara, where are you today?
I'm also at home in Bielefeld in the north of Germany, home office, but it's okay.
Excellent. So Germany, I think there's a lot of Germans here with us today. Right. I'd like to ask Martin, please, if you could introduce yourself next.
Yes, hello. My name is Martin, and a warm welcome also from my side. I'm very happy that this webinar takes place. I'm working at Industrial Solar for 8 years, mainly responsible in the business development with a key focus on the MENA region, and I'm happy to share an update on the current market situation, to some extent also impacted by COVID-19, the market of concentrated or solar heat for commercial and industrial applications. And very much I'm looking forward to discussing also things with you and learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Who isn't impacted by COVID-19 today, I suppose? Where are you based today again?
I'm Freiburg, Germany, and as you can see, I'm in the office. Alone, no one else is here. So
okay, so that is social distancing, all right?
Yeah,
excellent. There is people from Kuala Lumpur, from India, from everywhere, really, even Mexico. So definitely, there's some people here. There's the middle of the evening right now. Thorsten, please, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, happy to do so. So thanks for having me. So I was just recognizing that Bärbel, you say Bielefeld is north of Germany. So I'm from Hamburg at the northern top, so to say. Yesterday I have been in Freiburg also passing by, coming from a solar thermal construction site. So I'm in charge of sales and business development for Savo Solar. That's a Finnish company producing collectors and doing turnkey solutions. And we're doing, let's say, low temp solar thermal applications like district heating and process heat below 100 degrees. So industrial solar is doing the bigger things, the hotter things, and we are the cool ones. Okay. Looking forward to receiving more questions and delving into the topic with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Thorsten. Okay, I'm going to ask Manuel, who's behind in the techie, to take away that so that, Barbara, you can start preparing your presentation. And you can also mute your microphone. I've just done that for you. And we will begin. The format we will follow today will be, we'll hear from Barbara, we'll hear from Martin, and then from Thorsten, and you can send questions. So we will take the questions at the end, but do send them through the Q&A box, which is at the bottom. What happens is if you send them through the chat, they tend to get lost because there is so much movement in the chat. So please use the Q&A box. There's one more thing. We are recording this session and the materials will be available. We'll send them to you by next week so that you can have access to them. Barbara, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Belén. Okay, I will tell a bit about my latest survey. We have done these kind of surveys based on a world map we have put up since 4 years in a project called Solar Payback, which is looking after solar industrial heat solutions in countries like Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, and India. This map should illustrate that there is a very active supply chain especially for solar industrial heat. So we are very picky with that and only list companies which are really active in this field. We have now 76 online. It's always changing because we update the survey, this world map after each survey, and only the active responsive companies will be listed again. There are 2 empty categories which we like to fill later on, because we have understood that nowadays solar industrial heat is mostly offered by system suppliers from the solar thermal industry background, but more and more conventional energy suppliers are also interested in adding solar heat to their portfolio, which is a very interesting trend, and we want to invite others to become a part of our world map. This is the portfolio of the companies which are today online. You see that there are 30 which are not collector producers, so they purchase whatever they want and they just offer turnkey. And then you see that there is a high background with collector manufacturing, very divided. You have flat plates, you have linear Fresnel, you have concentrating, which is only India, new upcoming collector manufacturers like evacuated flat plate collectors, so a big range. This shows, as we have done surveys over the last 5-6 years, we can do these kind of rankings. That means we have listed the companies which have the highest number of ship plants, very different in size actually. And you see from this listing that really the hub for the industry is Mexico, India, and Germany. So this is where the industrial solar heat industry is sort of focused today. And the companies are fairly established already, and they are a fair mix of collector manufacturers and some also without. The ones which are now marked with these yellow arrows, these are the ones offering concentrating collectors from their own productions. Well, it's a tough business. This is sort of my wording. We cannot really hide that. You see from the last year's results and surveys, the world market of ship, this is what we are searching for with these surveys, sort of declined. It didn't decline very roughly, but 107 systems to 99 systems to 86 systems, you see that there is a certain downward trend. This is generally because systems contracting is delaying a lot. So we see in a lot of countries hesitating companies, clients, so that contracts are difficult to reach. What the number of megawatt is concerned, there is a big fluctuation. You see from 153 to 39 to 251. And this is mainly because the project of Mira, which is an Oman project developed by ClassPoint for the oil industry. And they commissioned their parabolic drafts in greenhouses in a certain phases. The first phase was finalized 2017 with 120 megawatt, and they did 2019 another 180 megawatt. And unfortunately, I was informed that this project might stop at this point, which is a bit sad because they are now at 360 megawatt, but they wanted originally to do 1 gigawatt, and it seems that the client, for not really clear reasons yet, have not announced or have not accorded the third phase. And you see that the average size of the projects is increased from 2018 to 2019. This is the last line in my shorter descriptions. And this is mainly because we have identified a lot more Chinese projects, larger Chinese ship projects. This was a bit the deepness of the survey that we increased over years, and I will come to this later. Well, I'd also a bit of a bad or sad news is that 86 of the ship technology suppliers that took part in our survey, this roughly 80, claim that they are not satisfied with the business development in 2019 because of the low energy prices and, as I said, the long contracting period. They claim to increase the pressure on the industry sector to implement carbon reduction targets. So I think this is really new in my surveys, that there is a clear sort of claim and also a kind of nervous or really we have a big potential. This is what they always repeat, these industry people, but we cannot develop the market fast enough. So we have asked them for the factors to speed up their solar process heat business. And these are the 4 factors that were mentioned the most in the most recent survey, February, March this year. Carbon taxes or mandatory regulations. This is really the focus of the industry, saying to increase the pressure, either one of these or even both measures are absolutely necessary, and there's a strong call for this at the moment. And some countries, even India, and I also heard about Brussels, are really thinking now about this idea of mandatory regulations. This means a certain quote, let's say a renewable quote for the industry and or any kind of regulation, like an individual target for the industry to do a certain share of renewables. Besides that, certainly financing is still an issue. If you ask European technology suppliers, they usually ask rather for grants. If you go outside Europe, where systems are generally more cost effective already, you have low interest loans. If you come to Mexico, India, where the taxes are, the interest rates are very high, this is also like an incentive. And certainly awareness is an issue. The industry is not really aware of SHIP as an option yet. So marketing and promotion focused on industrial customers is also what the industry really looks for. Some results from our latest survey. You see the top countries where most SHIP plants were installed last year are again more or less the same, but they have shifted a bit. Mexico went down. This is also an effect on the world market, because they were really strong in 2018 with 51 systems, and they are now back to 26. This is a bit the effect of the new government, and it seems that the manufacturers also have sort of different sales philosophies. You know, they try to go rather for larger industries in 2019, and they found that this is really hard to contract, and so they had a going down in their numbers of systems, they realized. So this might be more like a going down effect for a shorter time, and we hope that Mexico is picking up again, and this will increase overall market. Mexico is really a commercial market, so there's no subsidies, and it's really the fuel oil and the oil boilers, which are in big numbers in the industry, which pay off. So, and I also listed you a number of other countries where new SHIP installations were installed. So the technology really spreads. Belgium, Cyprus, France, Malaysia, Netherlands, Portugal, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Turkey, and USA saw new installations last year. So you see that it's really not, I mean, it's mainly focused on the large countries with a number of systems, but it's widespread technology as well. Some of the largest new SHIP installations 2019, the one I already mentioned, Mira, these huge glass houses, which are parabolics, which are in glass houses in the middle of the desert. There was one nice installation from GE Energy in the Netherlands with 6.5 megawatt. It's a heating freesia plant, like a freesia growing glass houses. This is a decision now by the International Solar Heating and Cooling Program of the IEA to also list certain agricultural applications under SHIP, because they are not counted anywhere else. So these kind of agricultural heating or supporting systems are also counted as SHIP since last year. There's one system from Hemin, a 3.4 megawatt system with vacuum tubes for an electronic producer in Wuhan. And actually, Linur Paradigna was not able to provide any photo of a 2019 plant, because most of these customers seems to be delicate with being named or even being photo taken and so on. So this is an older one showing for, and I think it was an I forgot. I have to look it up. But what is really amazing about Linur Paradigma, that they have recorded for 2019 these 18 ship plants with an area of 69,140 square meters. This is the highest capacity that was ever recorded by any of our surveys outside Glass Point, which is, really doing big style. So the average field size for them was 3,841. And this is really, and most of them were vacuum tube collectors, partly preheating boilers, partly on a higher temperature level. And we are working now with Linur Paradigma to receive really a bit more of these installations, because you can see from the size and the quantity that this is really becoming an interesting world market factor. An interesting and very positive effect is the dynamism within the ESCO business that we observed for 2019 the first time. ESCO means energy service company, and you offer a company a heat contract, a heat delivery contract, instead of selling them the hardware. We have 2 new systems that were finally installed, commissioned in ESCO model. There's one Condat paper mine in France, which is done by New Heat as the ESCO company. And we have a second company in a chemical factory in Belgium. And this project was developed by Edstack, a Belgium company, and Solitem is the collector producer. We have one which was contracted, a very big one, I think 10 megawatt, which will be installed in France probably until August this year. And the investor here is Kyotherm, and the heat supplier is also New Heat. Further, Kyotherm, which is like an investor for ESCO projects, not only ESCO, but renewable heat contracts in general, have announced 11 further solar heat supply contracts under negotiations, and they are all outside France. So it seems that they really use the contacts to the solar thermal industry to jointly develop these projects. And we find this a very amazing trend, because we know that, spending money for industrial companies for not production concerned topics like energy is hard. And if you come around with an offer saying, you just invest into your normal solar heat or heat, it's much easier. Sunti also, they are also a French company, and concentrating on ship, have negotiated the first heat contract, and they will sign it soon with a cheese producer in France. So for this good news, I've listed you here another ranking resulting from the world map. These are all companies that have sold more than 10,000 square meter installations, not in one, but in several. But I mean, they have, a certain capacity by having installed systems with this more than 10,000 over the years. And here I have put green arrows to tell you who of them is already offering heat supply contracts. And you see that, SHIP is highly interlinked with ESCO, and you see a lot of arrows here. So Mexico, Modulo Solar, Soliterm in Germany, Solid in Austria, Pampa Elvira in Chile, and Glass Point. Glass Point actually has one contract in California, 850 megawatt system they want to install in the next years. The oil field is called Bell Ridge, and this is an ESCO project also. The one in Oman was not. The one in Oman was turnkey. And Linur is light green here because they have actually founded a subsidiary to do solar heat contracts already, I think, 1.5 years ago. But they told us that they have only done heat pump projects yet and not solar systems yet. So they are about to develop, but have not done yet. So all in all, a very positive and promising news. But there's one disturbing one I also want to share with you. In Asia, in India, we had a very positive company contact 2017 when we quoted the CEO from the company Aspiration Energy that he was very confident in realizing ship projects with ESCO over 20 megawatt in the next 1.5 years. And I was really enthusiastic to question them this year and ask them how much of these many systems they planned they have realized. And they have realized not a single one. Altogether, they have contracted 70 ESCO projects in the last 2 years, but all of them only with heat pumps and not with solar technology. So this seems to be a strong trend that was a bit, new to me as well. I've never heard that drastically before, that heat pumps are sold as a ship solution because it's driving electricity costs up. But in India, it seems that electricity cost, at least the last years, didn't increase so much. So companies are not afraid of that. Well, this is all I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for giving me the floor. And these are my contacts. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. It's been really interesting. It's like a trip around the world, looking at ship projects. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask Martin now to share his screen so that we can go with the presentation. There's a couple of questions there for you. We can take afterwards, so you can answer now by text. Up to you. Martin, we can see your presentation. Let me take your microphone off. Here we go. Can you put that in a large screen?
Is it in large screen now?
Is that as large as it gets? We can still see the PDF from
now
this end.
I know what you mean. Sorry. I was still thinking so much about Bärbel's presentation that I got a bit distracted. Is it okay now?
All right. Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So again, warm welcome. Good morning, good evening. Hello to everyone around the world. Thanks, Bärbel, for the interesting update. I think no one else could give such a comprehensive overview worldwide. I have to go through it again. So I cannot even try to give such an update. It's fast industrial solar, more one company solution provider perspective. Nevertheless, I'm confident that I have something to share. Very briefly, I talk about industrial solar, and then about, as mentioned in the title, how we perceive the situation with the crisis we're actually in, and then go through various factors and trends which I think are helping to understand the current situation of the market, and from which conclusions can be drawn on the next development. So industrial solar is a turnkey solution provider for solar process heating. We also do other energy technologies. As mentioned already in Bärbel's presentation, a lot of companies starting to do this, and we consider this for important request by the clients. And as just mentioned, we work mainly for concentrating solar thermal technologies, but also offer our clients alternative solutions if we consider them for more suitable. We have a very long track record. We focus on the MENA region, but truly look also beyond to other regions, Latin America, for example, and mainly focus on direct steam generation, where we have the technological most advanced systems, to my understanding, in operation at the moment. You can learn more in the links below, but I think there's now enough on industrial solar. And let's come now to the actual topic of the presentations today. So COVID-19, probably all of you have seen this chart, and for me, that this answers actually a lot. So yes, we are facing a situation, but we are facing much stronger or much larger challenges with climate change, and I think also that this is basically understood by everyone. So there's it's not a COVID-19 situation for the long term, but we have to and continue to consider the biggest challenge of climate change. Nevertheless, let's take a bit a deeper look what we can see today. For sure, energy prices dropped significantly. That's not to our favor. We see that potential off-takers have constrained investment capabilities. We see that lockdowns hampered international project development. All this does not make it easier for a supplier of ship solutions. Nevertheless, we also, and this is now the experience from industrial solar of the last 2 months where we are in the corona situation, we cannot experience a change in request from clients and multinationals. So multinationals are still calling us discussing with us how we can help to contribute that they achieve their targets which they have announced already. So this process for energy transformation, reducing emissions, is ongoing, and we do not see, at least now, an effect. Clearly, we do not know how the situation continues to develop, but at least from their side, I haven't heard anyone saying that the targets they've given, that they will be withdrawn. In addition, what we experience already, we know that huge investment packages are mobilized, and the discussion is ongoing whether and to which extent they're focused on green investments. And the results of these discussions are still open. The 5 points I mentioned, on the one hand, they're like a bit trivial also, or very apparent, but I do also believe that there are much deeper changes which we do not understand now. So just the fact that conferences are taking place completely virtual, which have been planned like as real life events, that people, thousands, millions of people work from home office. So there are deeper transformation processes going on, and they will surely also significantly affect our markets. And we only start to understand how they see. What we experience also with the increased use, for example, of online communications, webinars, seminars, we also experience that actually we can do project development much more effectively. That's because we were forced to do so during the COVID-19 situation. And this trend, I think, will continue. So now looking a bit beyond the pure COVID-19 situation, what things are moving the market at the moment? On the one hand, I think it's interesting, again, to summarize, especially for the people who are not so much focused or not following the EU policy so much, but the EU, end of 2019, issued the Green Deal. And within the Green Deal, so with the ultimate target of net zero emissions by 2050, which is quite ambitious, and also increasing the ambitions for 2030. So also short-term targets are increased. This provides a lot of momentum for the decarbonization, and thus also for industry, and thus also for solar process heating. So 3 of the 8 targets directly relate to the market for commercial and industrial heat, or solar heat for industry and commerce. Industry, mobilizing industry is explicitly mentioned. This does not only has a relevance for the EU, but for sure the effects happening in the EU will also foster technological development, which are of use in a global market. But this will definitely mobilize short-term or the short to medium term the developments in Europe. So looking beyond this, and that's also linked to the funding of, for example, Horizon 2020, European Horizon 2020 research projects, where a lot is happening already in the field of solar heating and cooling. So I took the time to go through what is actually happening, listed a few projects which mostly are still running, upcoming. Few of them have been already completed. There are much more out there. And also for myself, I try to understand, okay, what are, or to compile what are the driving factors, because the research projects today, they help us to understand how the commercial market will look in the future. So please go through them if you want to study them in more detail. But the summaries, so clearly collector cost reduction is always a topic, but it's not the key topic from my understanding. It's partly, it's an old project mentioned partially, but it's not the key part. So interesting topics are still sector specific, prototyping, for example, bringing ship to the food industry, bringing ship to textile or chemical industries. This is ongoing, and I think also personally that this is a very important part. The integration with other renewables, Bärbel mentioned the growing heat pump markets, also is increasingly addressed. And I also believe that this is important as not necessarily as a challenge for a supplier of solar heat, but to some extent also as an opportunity. In addition, more for the long term, production of liquid fuels becomes more important. So do high temperature processes bring solar heat also to processes not possible today or not commercially possible today, like for example concrete cement factories. And also increasingly the water energy nexus is addressed. So these topics should be or are already like influenced by the solution providers of solar heat today, and they will continue to be important for the next years. What are from the private sector the trends? So we've seen, for example, with the RE100 initiative, already major companies moving to ambitious renewable electricity targets. And now in the last year, we've seen also that the same happens or increasingly happens for the thermal part, which is very important because this part needs to be addressed individually. So I'm not sure, to those who don't know the Renewable Thermal Collaborative, it's not the only collaborative in this part, but it's very interesting following them, what they're doing and addressing explicitly the heating market, because they see when they look at their processes, actually we have to talk about heat to achieve significant decarbonization. And you see multinational from all kinds of sectors are engaging there, and also these trends will not be stopped, for example, by Corona, I suppose. Another trend also mentioned before is holistic approaches again. So that's a graph from the IRENA roadmap 2050. The message I want to stress here is that for sure the decarbonization of industry is a very, very complex, very ambitious target. And it will only be possible with holistic approaches. So from this perspective, it's the seeing different technologies as competing is valid for the individual project. Also the project we are facing, we experience that companies challenge us with the opportunities from PV or heat pumps. But in the long term, it's not whether it's one or the other, but it's rather how they complement to achieve the ultimate targets. And therefore, companies already today can prepare to ease the integration with other technologies, both in the operation, but also in the development of projects. So developing comprehensive projects, which eventually use different technologies, will become more and more important and also add more value to the clients. Finally, this was already mentioned, and I also strongly believe, as we all do at Industrial Solar, the trend for contracting will continue. So the basic part, why this, what are the driving forces? When you see on the right-hand side that actually it's the end user who covers costs and all the risks, all these costs and risks are moved to the energy service company. They don't do this for free. They still can make a profit, but from the business model, it's much more promising. And as most other players believe, this is actually will continue to gain importance and become the ultimate most strong market for solar heat. Also policy, here the results are not so much focused on solar heat, but still we experience the need. I think also this became apparent from the question Bärbel just presented. The sector, it's the complete sector for renewable heat, but especially for solar heating, still requires also push from the public sector. If you look at the red and orange parts, so and the gray parts at the very bottom, so markets can be separated in different phases. And for solar heat, we are definitely not fully in the R&D phase anymore. We are in the inception phase, start of the inception phase. And what I wanted to stress here is that for designing suitable policy instruments which are needed to achieve industrial decarbonization in the heating part, specific policies needs to be defined. And depending on or taking the consideration that this is the market phase where we are in, these policies need to consider the market phase. So whereas, for example, solar PV is in a different market phase, also different policy instruments are suitable, but the know-how, the general concepts, how to design successful policies for heating is available, but it needs to be strengthened the case that the lessons learned in some countries are extrapolated and successful policies to be implemented specifically for heating in the industry. And again, we do see the situation if there is a challenge that if targets, for example, are purely set for reducing the consumption of fuels or reducing the emissions, these targets are technologically neutral, which is ultimately good, but at early market phases, it still might be beneficial also in the long term from a macro perspective to specifically foster individual technologies. We have seen this also for other technologies, most importantly for PV, where it was just decided a certain number of projects will be implemented 20 years back, and thereby having these early phases pushed for specific technologies. The technology grew to become self-competing and didn't require this specific technologically push anymore in the long term. Here we still need, I think, improvements for solar heating in industry and commerce. Finally, summing up what I just went through, impact of COVID-19, for sure, it's very strong, but there will be a loss, definitely we experience this, but the ultimate impact is still open. The EU Green Deal will accelerate industrial transformation. This trend is definitely ongoing and not affected from the above mentioned Corona situation. Same for the corporate transformation. We do not see that these transformation project is questioned by multinationals. Holistic approaches, taking into consideration different technologies, become more and more relevant for solution providers. So does R&D market, or so does the continuous investment in R&D activities to position companies to be able to provide these holistic approaches. Contracting also continues to gain importance. And on the policy side, the implementation of suitable policies needs to be accelerated. Know-how is there. There are very good, very successful best practices in various countries around the world. But to my understanding, the exchange is still insufficient, and the learning needs to be accelerated. How countries can gain from the experience other countries made to accelerate solar heating in industry and commerce. That's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Martin. You're a bundle of joy and optimism today. This is amazing. I really enjoyed this. There are certainly a lot of hints here and there, right? But we still, we're missing that one law that is just for us, but I think it's definitely covered in a lot of different things. I'm going to ask now, Torsten, can you stop sharing? Let me see if I can take this presentation off. Torsten, you have stuff to share as well, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead or prepare a talk. You know what you're doing. So,
okay,
and then after that, Barbel is doing a really amazing job, answering all the questions. Thank you, Barbel. But we'll get into a little bit of a conversation after you're done. We have plenty of time. But I've really actually enjoyed seeing also that presentation about all of those policies that together cover so much ground on what we need to get done. Go ahead, Torsten.
Okay, so I do hope you can hear me and see this here. So first of all, I'd like to thank Bärbel and Martin. So this was amazing. It was really high quality stuff. I have to say congrats to that and thank you. So what I am showing here is much less information. I was sticking to pictures to describe what we are doing at Savosolar, and I can only come back to what Martin has already said. So we might compete with technologies on projects, but not on general. So we need to work together anyway. And there was a question and answer topic here, like whether or not we're going to see combinations of heat pumps and solar thermal, for example. And yes, we will. So there might be, let's say, tendencies and periods of times where, let's say, opportunities swing in favor of this or that technology. But I think we should see this from the end. So what amount of terawatt hours we would have to decarbonize, and that is not done with 1 or 2 or 3 technologies. So what is Savosolar doing? So Savosolar is a Finnish company. Their certain absorber for solar thermal collectors had been developed, and with that invention in mind, they started producing collectors and found out, well, small ones won't do, so let's go big and then build really huge ones. The typical collector is close to 16 square meter, a single piece, weighs some 430 kilograms, and we are aiming for lower than 100 degrees Celsius. So that's our target. You see it here in the overview. District heating and process heat are the applications. We do this by turnkey deliveries as an EPC or via heat as a service. This is then not us. Bärbel mentioned a lot, geotherm, new heat. We did this, picture from the bottom right is from Condat. That's the paper mill that Bärbel mentioned already. You see peculiar substructure of the collectors. That is because we track with these monster flat plate collectors. So from morning to afternoon, they are tilted, and the angle is constantly changing. So that's why the substructure has to be made special. So the idea is with these process heat applications to do this as easy as possible. That's why I put the 20-foot container there as a picture, also giving some kind of, let's say, standard idea. Every single project is different. We know this, you know this. Still, there has to be some kind of scaling concept we have to follow, and we want to make it as simple and, let's say, acceptable as possible for the off-takers, for the customers, for the investors. So keep it simple, try to make it standardized to scale up the whole thing. So I will just skip from the applications to a very practical one. So coming from what you had been doing, what you had been presenting before. So how to do this? This is a picture I took yesterday. This is an installation point, a construction site in Germany. And you see in the back, of course, the collectors, flat plate collectors. In the forefront, you see piles. These are, I think, 3.5 meters long in reality. So they are just rammed into the ground to carry the collectors. And these are some spare, so going to get moved to the next one. I put this picture here to speak about this, what is, let's say, basically to be said about it. So first of all, we are in international business. Despite this construction site being in Germany, companies from different countries have been taking part and are taking part of this. For example, the company doing the ramming with these steel piles is coming from Czech Republic. The solar collectors you can see, come from Finland. The construction site is in Germany. A leading engineer is coming from Austria, and better parts of the solar station are coming from Belgium. So with COVID-19 going on, some borders had been closed, and the people had been afraid of meeting each other and getting affected by the virus, falling sick, even losing or risking at least their lives. So how to deal with it? So this is on a very basic, on a very concrete level affecting us. So it is, as Martin said, it is about, let's say, remote organization of our administration work and of our office work and home office and telecommunication and virtual meetings. That's all fine, and that is going to stay, and that will have effects. I can only agree. We're only have a glimpse on what the effects will be in the next years to come. But on a very concrete level, this already affects us. So I came up with finding myself creating an invitation letter with a formal stamp and impressive signature, as much as I could do, to equip our international partners with that, to make them cross borders, first of all, to just basically reach the construction site and carry on with the work. So on these kind of concrete levels, it is affecting us also. And yeah, maybe leave it here. There's more pictures to show how this, let's say, installation has been growing and how it is done. But I think, well, you have basically an idea how a ground-mounted system is growing and what's needed, heavy machinery and all this kind of stuff. So this is something I wanted to highlight. So yes, there is a different work we need to do, an additional amount of administration just to do what we do anyway. But there is no compensation for this. So we are spending hours and days and weeks just on trying to make things happen, but we can't charge for that. So we are affected by this financially, and the projects get delayed, and there's no bridge finance that has been calculated in the budget upfront. So everything is cash flow wise affected. And this is not only for us, this is for everyone worldwide. I'm pretty aware of this. But as Martin also pointed out, there's discussions in various countries around the world which industries to provide a bailout for and which not. Now there's the fear and debate going on whether the, let's say, air carriers and or automotive sectors in Germany, for example, get a bailout, but not the solar guys and girls. So what to do? So there's now the let's say, tendency via the associations and via social movements and via just everyone speaking up and speaking out to achieve getting heard and make our case and say, well, we need to grow greener afterwards. We cannot just have a V-shaped recovery and back to normal, because normal was the problem to come from. So this is just a teaser. Maybe I'll leave this picture here for these remarks to enter into the discussion with everyone attending here. I'm just looking to my notes, but basically this is the centerpiece I want to discuss with you. Whether or not the financial world and the political world and the legal framework and the environment is going to change in favor of not just, let's say, coping with the virus and its effects, but with the way we do our economy, we do our societies, we prepare for resilience and sustainability, and bringing back this, let's say, terms and discussion and giving it a new approach to what is needed. And Martin, again, you showed it with your sketch of flatten the curve. Well, COVID is a small one. We need to flatten another curve. And I think this point has to be made over and over and over again, just to avoid that we're getting pushed to the side. So there is good stories to tell. There is more and more systems to come in France, in solar process heat, in solar district heating. So there is growth rates, and those are quite impressive, but we're starting from zero. We have to remind that. And the factor of growth we need to do, at least for Germany, I can say, is 50-fold. So whatever we did in solar thermal applications last year, we have to do every week this year. This is the factor we're looking at, and this is not just my pipe dream, but this is what the German government has been, let's say, decided and agreed upon already in their scenarios and in their climate plans. But the, let's say, legal environment and support for that is lacking. So this is where we are. In between, there's some good signs, but there's heaps and loads of work to do. Thank you.
I was just opening the microphones. Do you guys, I mean, I think it's a very interesting point that Torsten's made here. Barbel, Martin, I'd like to hear your opinions or your views. Would you like to add something here?
So from my side, not anything particular to add, but thanks for everyone for the presentations. I would have a question, if this is also allowed, also to...
all allowed. This is a conversation, so go for it. And
so my question to Bärbel and Torsten, everyone, is whether companies also report how the business development can be improved, because there are projects out there which are feasible. So it's not about, there are projects which need financial support, but there are a lot of projects out there which are feasible. And I'm questioning myself, what can we do to accelerate the implementation of these projects, because it's not only financial challenges we are facing.
If I may, so I'm also, let's say, ambassador for the heat changers, and I'm active with Solar in various solar and energy associations in Germany and Europe, with Euroheat and Power, for example, also. So I always like to make the point that the energy transition is a very, very complex thing, and especially when it comes not to just to power and electricity, but transport and heat, especially since it is so large. We know this. So, what I realize is that the decision makers, many decision makers so far, just didn't get it, just not. They're completely unaware. And there's and you made the point, or Bärbel did also, that there's much more of education to be done, and it's not that simple that we have a situation where everyone is fearing short-term effects on his or her personal life, like in COVID, where it was a matter of health and death. So everyone is willing to listen to scientists. Here we have an indirect effect, more long-term effect. It is coming already. There's the science not to be overlooked, but the people are not emotionally, let's say, involved that much. And this is still going on. So yes, it is not just about finance. It is about administration. It's about permits. A permit for the plant, you see, the preparation work for the engineers and for the planners had been 2.5 years. This is ridiculous, ridiculous. You need to do this in 2 weeks, and that's all. So we need to get involved, everyone. We have to have, let's say, kind of a state of emergency approach to this to get things done. And there is citizen assemblies and other means that's getting more, let's say, awareness right now, and more center stage for the discussion, more topics and more, let's say, social groups getting involved, not just the industries, the typical ones, to add some social pressure and movement to make our voices heard. So I think this is a very holistic, that got mentioned before, approach we need to make here. So that's my point of view. You're right, it's not just finance. Financing alone will not help because for these permits, for example, we cannot do this. Also, just a last remark, I have been consulting politicians last week, and I made clear that just going for, let's say, systems like we see here, if we do 50 times that much systems of that size, that would absorb all of our engineers and companies, and still we would achieve nearly nothing. So we need to go big and say, okay, how about a 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 square meter system, 100 megawatt system at a time, and focus our resources and our engineers and best people on that, and not just doing bits and pieces.
We have 10 questions open. We don't have a lot of time. Do you mind if we go through those? Because it's very interesting, but I just want to respond to some of those. So let me see. One of them is, have you made district cooling cost comparison for buildings, compounds versus conventional DC systems? Any kind of BP investors is needed? I'm not sure what Nora is meaning to ask in here. Have you made district cooling cost comparison for building compounds versus conventional DC systems? This is what it's asking. Either of you, any of you can answer this question? This is the first one on the list. Nora's question.
So maybe I can, because we district cooling is mainly in more sunny countries where we are working. It unfortunately depends very much on the specification. So if most cooling systems are electricity driven, and if this is the case, I see more potential to continue with these, especially in cities. For example, Dubai has very strong district heating sector, but in the city there's just no space. You would need millions of square meters for cooling. If in other situations where space is more abundant, it's an option. But there's no general answer, unfortunately. It depends very much case by case situation.
There's another question for you. How did you foresee the solar thermal industrial heat business going on or happening with the current prices of crude oil? This is a good point. You know, we're talking about COVID, but I mean, the price of also Brent has gone down so much. This I'd like to open to all of you. You're on the quiet side today. Martin, go for it.
Yeah, so I remember 2008 we had oil prices of more than 100. For sure, this is much better. But also, I think we've been all following that the prices. It was very nice to see that you actually got money when you bought petrol in the US. But we know that this is not only the short-term COVID effect. This is also very much on politics, Russia and Saudi Arabia. So, but these things will not continue forever. The clear trend is oil is depleting, and costs for digging out the oil become more expensive. Only taking this short-term perspective, yes, there's nothing positive about it, but I do not see this as the continuous ongoing trend in most markets.
I would like to add when speaking to city utilities, they are aware of these plummeting prices, but they see this as an, let's say, a short-term effect. So they think about, let's say, 2, 3, 4 decades for their investments anyway, and they are not that much impressed. That's for the time being, at least. So these plans may face delay due to, let's say, immediate effects with physical meetings not being possible and so on. But basically, the financial plans and investment plans are not affected as far as I can see right now.
Thank you very much, Thorsten.
Maybe can I add? Unfortunately, this is a challenge, especially in industry and also district heat. These investments are long term. If you think about buying a car or a smartphone, you will have the next one in less than a decade. But boilers are remaining, as Thorsten said, for long term. But this is a challenge. Most oil boilers installed today, we are stuck with them. So this rather stresses the importance to take the right decisions now, especially for greenfield projects.
Someone notes here that permitting is such a huge problem. People often complain about permitting as 1/3 of the project costs too. Barbel, does this vary per region, or do you see like a variance depending on the type of project?
We have not systematically asked for permitting. I think it's one of the reasons that projects take long. But I think to get a positive decision from the management, at least what we learn from our questionnaires, is also hard, because it's very easy that management reacts to any kind of changes in policy, in competition, in shifting, their productions, changing their productions. And the solar thermal guys, they sometimes even have the economy on their side. They can tell them solar heat will be cheaper than what you produce today as gas. But managements of companies find a lot of reasons, not to invest at this moment, because whatever they have to think about the new product and they have to change their production and they might have a different heat supply or whatever. This is what happens a lot of times. And I think that this permitting, don't correct me, Martin, but I think that it's more also a Central European one. I don't think that Mexico has this permitting issues and other countries, because they realize projects much faster than us. So I think that this is, for this reason, probably a more regional one. But I think this undividedness of the industry is very hard. And that's why I think the industry really is urgently calling now for any kind of impulse from outside, so that they have another good argument to address them. It's not only solar is nice and solar can save you energy costs, but it must be something like you have to fulfill a quote. So please listen to me, because all this playing around, it's something nice, but I have other important factors. I have to purchase my competitor or whatever. Doesn't bring you to anything. I think they're really trying hard to sell, but this is what's happening in the figures.
But if I may add, licensing, that could also, and I experienced this in some market, that it's actually also like a competitive edge of thermal, because we experience in a lot of countries with increasing amount of renewable electricity that the approval process for renewable electricity processes gets delayed or stopped completely, and their solar thermal is very much straightforward. So that's not only a challenge, it can be a major argument for solar thermal, especially from investors who are saying, we get stuck, we have permissions we wait for PV permissions with the grid operator for 12 months, and they said, okay, we have to invest. So they actively approach us for this reason to look into thermal projects.
Yeah, and I want to add, so what Bärbel said is completely right. I think we could all tell heaps of stories in this regard. So, for example, in return, this makes it completely useless for us to address industries for ship projects. So we wait for them to understand, let the penny drop, and let them call us. And this is now happening. This is now happening not only in France with this famous ESCO approach, but now in Germany also, since the people understand, oh, now there's a price tag on carbon coming, and they need to prepare for their investments looking decades ahead. And so now these emissions become a price and become a cost, And now they're coming and thinking forward. So, and then you have a management that is open-minded, and then you can even build their process around the applications and the technologies you can provide. So again, it is coming to the legal environment. It's coming to financial pressure they have to face. We are having to speak about mandatory, let's say, obligations having to put in place. Unless this is the case, I will not try to convince anyone from the fossil fuel industry, so just from anyone. Well, even if I might present them double-digit IRR, they would not. They would
exactly,
not
and we reach this in a lot of times, you know.
Yes.
And it's they find any reason. Yeah, that's really. Yeah.
It's a problem of attitude. But I mean, it's slowly but surely changing, right? In Spain, you know, the utilities here had said, oh, we can't change of coal. It's impossible, 2030 at the very least. And then the prices of CO2 went up just a teeny tiny bit last year. And they were like, okay, we don't need coal anymore. Thank you very much. And within a year, like 90% of the coal plants were closed. And everyone was sitting there going, oh, no, but actually you lobbied the regulators to stay open for another 10 years. Yep, doesn't make sense anymore. So yeah, I mean, I agree, you guys. Like, we need to get to that point, don't we, where the pressure is applied in the right place, that the decision goes up in the level of priority that it has. Because, you know, even if it's the best business in the world, and because how many years have we had the opportunity not to travel and to work? You know, like we're working now, and we haven't really done it, have we? We're still traveling as much as we had to, just because it was like inertia, the business as usual, I'd say. So thank you very much. We've run out of time, but I'd like to thank Torsten. I'd like to thank Barvel very much, and Martin. You guys had amazing presentations. You know, you had some of your colleagues online that were saying, yes, you know, we also had events. We reached similar conclusions. What an interesting point. Thank you very much. So that just tells that, you know, you have a community here that is appreciating what you're saying and thanking you, and also, you know, agrees very much with what you're saying. So I'd like to thank you one more. Thank everyone in our audience, and see you next time, guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.